All right. So a couple of folks have asked for a little bit more clarification or examples of how to use the SMART goal process to improve the way you set objectives and help you be more successful when you have something that you want to achieve on your own or for a learner. Okay. So first, let's talk about why set goals in behavior analysis. I love Todd Ward's quote here. He says, "Life is better with goals. They give you direction and a purpose. They can help motivate you to achieve things that take months or even years to attain, things with long deferred reinforcers that would otherwise have no effect on your behavior. And goals can help give you that extra boost when times are tough and you want to quit." To me, if I look at that first paragraph, I hear everything that happened over the summer semester, right? It was stressful. There's goals that aren't being reinforced right away. They're going to pay off later. You know, things are challenging. Life happens. And yet, I think a lot of you really still want to accomplish the goals that you set out for yourself back in orientation when we first started this journey. So what's cool is behavior analysis has looked at goals and goal setting for quite a while. In fact, there's more than 490 articles on goals and goal setting just in JOBM alone. So not even counting some of our other larger publications. So behavior analysts know a little bit about how to do this and how to do this well. But another leader, or at least someone who is important in our history, also had a neat quote that I want to include here, which is, "If we know where we are and whether we are tending, we could then better judge what to do and how to do it." So goals are not just something you write down and you say, "I'm going to do this thing." We want to know whether we're doing it, whether we're on the way towards success, uh, and what the best process is for accomplishing those goals. One of the ways that we can do that is to start with the general goal, something you want to accomplish, and then refine it. And SMART goals are a way to do that. So, hopefully, if you're thinking about setting a goal, you have some general idea of what you want to achieve and also what might contribute to achieving it. If you don't, then stop here. We got to start with something to shape. So, if you don't have any idea of what the goal is or what types of behaviors or actions contribute to that achievement, you're going to want to do the same things we do when we think about creating task analyses for our learners. Consult with an expert, search the literature, or otherwise narrow the range of potential targets for this goal. Once you have a general idea, go ahead and write it down. I'm going to use two examples as we walk through the SMART goal process, and hopefully one of them will be easy to connect to for some of you. So, example number one, I would like to get healthier this summer. Most of us know someone who has had this type of general goal in their life at some point. Example number two, I'd like to become more familiar with behavior analytic literature. Now, these are not goals on their own, right? They're not done. We got to do some more stuff before these are going to have any influence on our behavior and make us more successful. So, let's think about what the next step would be. So, SMART is an acronym that's going to help you think about different ways to refine that general goal into something that's more concrete and more useful, so more likely to help you achieve that goal. You might find some areas of the SMART process more helpful than others, depending on your specific goal, and that's okay. There's not necessarily only one way to refine your goals, and think of SMART as just kind of a framework that you might want to play with to help you achieve that. So, let's go ahead and look at our first piece of SMART. The first piece here is specific. We want our goals to be very clear and objective and to be narrow enough that we can know whether or not we're achieving them. So, some of the questions we might want to think about are, is it an action? Does my goal or the thing that I want to accomplish pass the dead man's test? Is the definition narrow enough, or is it too broad or too vague? Would a room of 5 people all agree on what the goal is from reading it? Or is there potential for misinterpretation? And have you included sub-goals if your goal involves multiple steps or topographies? So we might change our examples at this point by considering these questions a little bit. Here I've changed example 1 to be a little bit more specific. Not just be healthier, right? That doesn't necessarily give me enough information here. I would like to eat more fresh, unprocessed fruits and vegetables and increase my consumption of water. Those are both specific behaviors that pass the dead man's test. They're pretty narrow, and most people would probably agree on what the goal is here. We'll come back to sub-goals in a little bit. Example 2, I could narrow or make more specific as well. So I would like to read more behavior analytic articles from peer-reviewed journals is a better way of phrasing this goal. It's an action item. It passes the dead man's test. It's much more narrow. I'm not just going to become more familiar. What does that really mean? Well, I'm going to read more articles. I'm going to read more often. Let's keep going. Measurable is our next piece of SMART. So again, some questions to consider. Did you quantify the behavior? How will you measure it? Remember, we have all those dimensions. How are you going to measure it? Did you quantify the process? So the difference between the behavior and the process might be significant. Becoming healthier, I could have quantified as something like losing 5 pounds. In that case, I'm going to need to quantify the process too. What are the actions that I'm going to take that might help me achieve that measurable outcome? What behaviors do I need in order to reach that goal? How will you know you're on the right track? What types of measurements are going to indicate that you're getting closer to your achievement? And did you quantify criteria for success? What's the ultimate goal? How are you going to know if you're successful? You can stop measuring this. And then one of the ways that we can do that is keeping track of our progress. So where are you going to keep your data and how often are you going to analyze it? Again, incorporating as many or some of these areas into your goal to help refine it is going to make it more likely to take control over your behavior and to be a successful behavior change intervention. So let's look at how we changed a couple of these other case examples. So example 1 now has turned into, I will eat at least 5 servings of fresh fruit and vegetables each day and 8-ounce glasses of water, recorded on my FitnessPal app immediately after consuming. I will consider this completed when I have met both criteria for 2 whole weeks in a row without any cheat days. As you can see, the goal isn't changing on its own. It's still going to help me get healthier this summer. But the more I refine this, the more likely I'm going to be successful. And the more I've thought about what I really need to do to get where I want to go. Example 2, another example of refining here. I will read 2 unassigned behavior analytic articles each week and use a Google Doc to record my reading by summarizing the article in 1 paragraph and providing an APA-style citation. Each month, I will graph the number of articles that I have read or that I have recorded on the doc. So again, I didn't necessarily incorporate every single question here, but each of these goals is getting clearer and more objective. And we're only on M. So let's talk about A. A is achievable. The first thing to think about with achievable is it based on baseline data? Based on baseline data. But the reason we want to do that is because sometimes we set goals that are too hard or goals that we're already accomplishing. And both of those tend to be less effective than setting something that is a little bit better than what you're already doing, or maybe even quite a bit better, but not unrealistic. The other place of realism, or is it realistic, that we want to think about is, do we have the resources to really accomplish this? What are the competing contingencies? I used to run marathons. I love running marathons. But long distance running while balancing full-time work, full-time parenting, all the other things that are now on my plate is just no longer realistic. So I had to adjust my running goal so that now I do short bursts of running when I get a chance, but I focus on other ways of getting my exercise in that make more sense in the behavior change system in which I survive and hopefully thrive. And achievable, I like this question too when I think about achievable. Would you create a similar goal for a good friend? If you're not really sure whether or not your goal is a stretch goal or it's too easy, think about this question. I think about the class that we had just recently where we were talking about some of the WHO recommendations for nutrition and exercise. I would never tell a friend of mine, who drinks wine on a regular basis, like, you know what? You can only have 4 ounces of wine now because I say so. It's probably not based on baseline data. That would be too hard, and I would feel mean by doing that. So don't create mean goals for yourself either. Be sure that you're doing something that's achievable. If you never contact reinforcement, you're never going to continue along this path. So we want something reasonable that you're going to be able to achieve, reinforce yourself or reinforce that behavior, and then maybe even improve the criteria. We can continue to improve. So let's go back to our examples. Example 1 now becomes gives us some questions to think about. If my baseline data show I'm currently eating 2 servings, I might have to adjust or include sub-goals. I might also want to arrange my environment to make this behavior more likely and make it harder to engage in behaviors that might replace the one I want to see more of. So that's when we're talking about realistic in terms of resources and competing contingencies. Or for our second one, if my baseline data shows I'm not currently reading any unassigned articles, I might want to shape this successively and start with the goal of rewarding any additional reading that was not assigned. In this one, too, I have a hard time thinking competing contingencies aren't a big factor. So I might want to use some antecedents such as prompting, preparing materials and having them ready, and even pairing the activity itself with something else enjoyable, like reading with a friend rather than by myself. So these are all considerations that I might start to use to refine these goals based on the A, or the achievable piece of SMART. So if you read SMART goals in the general literature, you'll see R is realistic. We've kind of swooshed that together with achievable because I think the other R here is much more important, and that's reinforced. So what will the consequences be for achieving this final criterion? And what will reinforce successive approximations or actions that contribute to that goal? Please do not skip this step. A lot of times we, as maybe advanced learners or people with long learning histories, will say something like, well, I'm already rule governed. I know how to set rules for myself and follow them. That's fine. But there's a reason you're setting this goal, and it's probably because the existing contingencies are not getting you where you need to go. So just like we would do with our learners, if we want a behavior to happen more often or to happen differently or to change it in any way, we're going to look at the consequences that follow that behavior and make sure that there's some reinforcement, keeping that person on track. So just like our learners, we're going to consider some of the same factors regarding reinforcement. So what are your preferences? How can you eliminate bootleg reinforcement? Are you reinforcing effort and achievement? Maybe you still want to reward yourself if you gave it a good try and you didn't necessarily meet the criterion. Maybe we want to match magnitude of reinforcement with the difficulty of the task. Going back to the previous example, maybe reinforcing effort gets you a small reward, whereas achieving the criterion gets you a larger reward. And of course, if reinforcement on its own is not effective, we might have to look at response cost or punishment procedure or something that's a little more intrusive. But we can at least start with making sure that we have reinforcement in place for both the process that we want to engage in and achieving the goal. Our last piece of SMART is time bound. So a couple of things to think about. Have you included any temporal dimensions in your goal? Again, I could go back to my marathon goal and say, I want to run a marathon, but I don't really care when. Well, it's probably unlikely that I'm going to start doing duration-based running if I don't know when the marathon is in which I want to participate, because I'm not going to have any way of kind of making that reinforcer more valuable to me or motivating myself to achieve something within a certain amount of time. We also want to think about how often you're going to work towards the goal. So you have a goal that you want to accomplish by a certain time, but that probably includes engaging in other responses frequently or regularly. So have you included that? How often are you going to work towards this goal? Is it measurable? Is there a dimension there too? By what time do you want to achieve the sub goals? So we may set goals for successive approximations before we expect ourselves to hit that final criteria. Okay, so putting these pieces all together, let's look at a SMART goal related to our original goal of getting healthier over the summer. I'm going to walk through this in detail. So I will eat at least 5 servings of fresh fruit and vegetables each day and 8 ounce glasses of water, recorded on my FitnessPal app immediately after consuming. I will consider this completed when I have met both criteria for 2 whole weeks in a row without any cheat days. Now, I set here what I call a preemptive goal, which is that environmental arrangement piece. So my preemptive goal is that I'll subscribe to a delivery produce system and avoid going to the grocery store to help arrange an environment where it's easier to eat fruits and vegetables and harder to give in to temptation and buy unhealthy foods. I'll also select 2 restaurants that are more likely to have healthy choices and limit myself to social eating from those 2 places rather than putting social eating on extinction, because I'm probably gonna cheat then. Okay, so I'm gonna set my environment up in a way where high response effort is necessary to be unsuccessful, and the behaviors that I want to encourage are easy to do. I'm also going to break this one down into 2 sub goals. So my sub goal 1 will be I'll eat at least 3 servings per day for 1 week. Sub goal 2 will be that I'll eat at least 4 servings per day for 2 weeks. So I'm kind of successively getting closer and closer to that 5 servings a day goal. Okay, so now we're going to put that reinforcement and timing time-bound piece. So I will accomplish my preemptive goal by 7:15 at midnight. If I do, I'll put $1 in my restaurant eating fund. I will accomplish sub goal 1 by 8:15 at midnight. If I do, I'll buy myself a fancy Yeti water bottle. I am assuming that's a water bottle. I know that they are really like highly preferred around the fitness circuit, but I don't have one. So pretend it's something cool related to drinking water. I will accomplish sub goal 2 by 9:15 at midnight. If I do, my partner and I will attend a series of online cooking classes for fun. For each day in which I achieve the criterion, I'll add a quarter to the restaurant fund. Each day in which I do not achieve the criterion will cost me 50 cents from the restaurant fund. If there's no money in the fund, I will need to revisit my program and adjust based on the data that are available. So again, we can see that the goal itself is still the same, but the way that we've gone about setting it up is more likely to make me successful and more likely to give me good data about how successful I am so that I can adjust if I need to and keep going forward. All right, let's look at our second example before we finish up. So remember, our original goal here was just to become more familiar with behavior analytic literature. Now we've done some considerable refining. So now we've got a goal that says, I will read 2 unassigned behavior analytic articles each week and use a Google Doc to record my reading by summarizing the article in 1 paragraph and providing an APA-style citation. Each month, I will graph the number of articles that I have recorded on the doc. Preemptive goal 1. I will download 20 articles of my choosing and have them printed next to the coffee maker in a binder. I will bookmark a citation machine and set up a Google Doc on my laptop. I will accomplish these by 7:15 at midnight and reward myself by FaceTiming my BCBA friend to show her my setup and recruit positive reinforcement. Preemptive goal 2. I will put 3 one-hour blocks of time on my shared family Google Calendar that are set aside for behavior analytic reading only. I will tell my family that nothing else can be scheduled during that time and help family members identify activities that they can do that will not distract me during those moments. I will also send an electronic invite to my BCBA friend to virtually join me and will ask her to text me at the end of the set aside time to ask if I read if she's unable to be present. I will set the calendar to prompt me 15 minutes before my reading appointments via my cell phone. I will do this by 7:16 at midnight and will reward myself by renting a relaxing movie from on demand. Something I don't usually do. Continuing on, each week I will graph my data. If I read at least 2 articles, I will allow myself to drive through Starbucks or get donuts for our Sunday Fun Day brunch. Each month, I will analyze my graph. If I read more articles than the previous month, I will order in Sunday Fun Day brunch from Grubhub, and my partner will clean it up. If I did not read more articles than the previous month, I will have to add an additional block of time to my calendar for the following month. Each month, I will also send my summaries to my supervisor. The supervisor can provide positive social reinforcement and also send me additional article at no response effort to add to my binder. As you can see, SMART goals can be just one way to be more professional and more likely to be successful at meeting the objectives that you want to achieve. We can also apply this to our learners. And in fact, having them walk through this process with you for some advanced learners might be a great tool for them to add to their toolbox, especially if you're teaching something like self-monitoring or self-management. More information is available. I love the Vargas article. It was shared with you guys before, but if you hadn't read it yet and you feel like this is something you could improve upon, feel free to access this link, this PDF document, where you can read the chapter on setting goals to improve achievement. It really applies more to academic goals and to creating learning goals for the people that we serve. But again, the concepts are the same. So we are humans. Those people that we serve are humans. We can always apply the science of human behavior. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions or need some help refining your goals, feel free to reach out to me with office hours. And I will see you guys at our next opportunity.